Good, good afternoon, good morning to some of you, good evening to others, and a warm welcome to this TMForum webinar, building a data platform to support CSPs analytics ambitions. My name is Mark Newman. I'm Chief Analyst at TMForum. And just before introducing our esteemed panelists, just a brief word from me in terms of the subject today. So I think the topic around data analytics platforms is one that's grown consistently as a strategic priority over the last 10, 15 years within telcos. I'm sure our panelists would agree it's challenging for operators, challenging because of the fact that telecom operators are large organizations, many functions doing different things, a lot of M&A, and I think building a platform that pulls together the data, the insights across the organization is particularly challenging, but it's an exciting challenge. And I think now that we're in the era of AI machine learning, it's becoming ever more mission critical. So I think today we're focusing on a specific aspect of that, which is the platform to manage all those different data sources. Really looking forward to it. So that's enough from me. Or just to say before we move on, the session today is going to be recorded and it will be circulated to you in the next 24, 36 hours. So you don't need to take notes or take screenshots. You can give us your full attention because you will be getting a copy of the slides. If you have any questions while Girish or Vikas are speaking, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of the console and we'll pick up your questions during the session today. We will be finishing on the hour. We know you have meetings to go to, so we don't like to overrun. So that's enough from me. So if I could ask Girish and Vikas just to put their cameras and mics on. Vikas, Girish, I trust you're there.
I think we'll need the host to allow us to turn.
Okay, so we have, Maureen, are you still there with us? So Girish, okay, there you go, Girish and Vikas. So sorry for the technical issue there. So Girish and Vikas, so thank you first of all for getting out of bed so early. So Girish, I know that you're in Denver, so what time is it for you?
It's a few minutes past 7 in the morning, Mark.
And Vikas, you're in Seattle, aren't you? So an hour sooner. So coffee at hand, I trust.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for joining us. So Girish, Senior VP Marketing at Accel Data, Vikas Ranjan, Senior Manager Data Analytics Engineering at T-Mobile. So if I could just ask you both just to give just a brief introduction to yourselves, what you do within your organizations. It's better for you to talk about it, I think, than me. So Girish, over to you.
Oh, thanks, Mark. First of all, thanks, Mark and TMForum for hosting, which is going to be a fantastic and very informative webinar. And before I talk a little bit about myself and my company, I want to thank Vikas and T-Mobile for taking time off their busy schedule of not only running one of the world's largest telecommunication service provider, but to rather take time and share the insights from their learnings with this audience. Having said that, I'm Girish Bhatt. I lead everything related to marketing at Accel Data. Accel Data is a startup that pioneered a new category in data management and analytics, which is called data observability. I'll talk a little bit more about Accel Data towards the end, and we are fortunate to have marquee customers, telco customers, financial services customers, and healthcare customers. And glad to be part of this forum and this webinar. Over to you, Vikas.
Thank you so much, Girish, and thank you again, Mark and the team here for this opportunity. Actually, everything about data excites me, so it's not too early for me. It is the right time for me, Mark. Jokes apart, my name is Vikas Ranjan. I've been in T-Mobile for 18 years now. In my most recent role, I'm working as a senior manager of data analytics and a platform team in one of our very critical business role in the organization. I am literally a technologist by heart, and every time we talk about data, I think I'm just looking at all different ways of opportunities to learn and share my perspectives. Super excited to be here, discussing my learnings and perspective with Mark and Girish.
So Vikas, so you must have been there from the start of the journey.
I have been privileged to be part of the beginning of the journey at T-Mobile.
Wow. Well, so I was just saying before we open up the session that how lucky we are to have T-Mobile join us, because I think, and I'm not just saying this, when we look at the last 10, 15 years, I think T-Mobile has been one of the success stories. So I'd say, certainly the last 10, 15 years, for me, it's T-Mobile and Jio in India have been the two big global success stories. So delighted to have you with us.
Thank you.
Okay, so so should we move on to slides, Maureen? So just in terms of what we're discussing today, I will hand over to Girish and Vikas to walk through modernization challenges, data platforms, common approaches, how to track and manage costs in a multi-cloud environment, structure and governance, an issue for everybody. Girish will introduce the concept of data observability. Then we'll have a discussion and a Q&A. But before all of that, we're going to ask you to do a little bit of work, and we have a poll question for you. So Maureen, if you can bring up the poll question. So I'll read it out to you. What data platforms are you using? So you can put in multiple answers. So you'll be able to click on more than one. So can you click on all of those data platforms that you use currently? And we just want to get some feel for where we stand. So I do like this part where you see these numbers going up and down. So that's always quite fun. It seems to be settling down. So it seems that half the attendees using Hadoop, and a fair sprinkling across, Azure, Snowflake, Google BigQuery. So I think, Girish, maybe I can just come to you to get your thoughts on whether that's more or less what you would have expected.
Directionally, yes, Mark. What we are seeing from Axle Data's perspective is it's not only the CSPs, but most enterprises have more than one data platform. They might have started with the likes of Hadoop, and they've run into issues with proprietary Hadoop distributions, and then they try to migrate to different cloud distributions. So directionally, this reflects what we are seeing in the marketplace.
Thank you. Vikas, any thoughts from you? Does that resonate?
Very well resonates with what Girish said, right? In my experience, this has been a journey, traditionally started from, databases to more of a Hadoop to a multi-cloud. And I will touch a little bit more of this in my subsequent slide, but absolutely. I think that's where we see transformation.
Okay, so I think, I said, don't we have any more options? So Maureen, I think you can take that poll down. And then we can then move on. So next slide. So I'm now going to turn my mic off, my camera off, and I'm going to hand over to, Vikash first, and you're going to walk us through T-Mobile. And as I said to you before in the introduction, Vikas, I mean, people are very interested in T-Mobile, what you're doing. So please take your time over this. We really want you to share the story properly with us.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Mark. All right, thank you. So I'm going to share, as Mark shared in this talk today, I'm going to talk about what our journey in T-Mobile has been around the data platform modernization. I'm going to talk about how we started from our inception to where we are today, and some of the challenges and some of the best practices. Maureen, next slide. Yeah, I think we all know the world we are living in today in the CSPs and the telcos. We are literally living in the world of hyper growth and hyper expectations. We don't see CSPs or telcos to be no longer a call provider. We don't see us as connecting people through making calls. We see the world is changing now. There has been an exponential growth in data. There are going to be around 5+ billion mobile users with 40+ billion devices generating tons and tons of data by 2025. The business is also transforming. It's no longer, as I said earlier, about making a call. It's all about how can we generate new money? How do we monetize our businesses? in the space of metaverse, in the space of the really awesome 5G network. We have built digital twins and many, many more potential areas of business. We are also living in this world where Gen Zs are no longer interested in making phone calls. I have my 10-year-old son. I don't remember last time when he made me a call. When I'm going back and looking at my kids, they're always doing some streaming on their devices. They're always doing some social media. I don't know how many different social media channels and applications they have installed on their devices. They are changing how they want to use the CSPs and how they want to use the devices and interact. We are in this very, very interested world of artificial intelligence, which enables and unlocks the art of possibilities by going more from a descriptive to more of a predictive to prescriptive analytics. And most recently, there has been lots and lots of momentum around generative AI. And last but not the least, telcos are no longer traditional network providers. We are seeing telcos becoming more of a software companies, more of a technologies companies. With the coming of cloud, with the possibilities in the space of 5G network, in the space of private networks, as well as edge computing, there has been a tremendous amount of shift and momentum in how telcos used to operate versus what we can do in future. Next slide, please. Well, that brings in a lot more opportunities and complexities in the world. Telcos are no longer a typical network companies anymore. When we look at it, a business domains within a CSP or a telco internally, we see network as the core of the business because everything is built around the network. However, we are working on this very cross-dimensional enterprise domains where we want to correlate and harmonize this data by looking at network insights with the customer insights, by correlating the data with the cost to care, by looking at the marketing, segmentation marketing, looking at the OpEx and the CapEx. How do we run this whole supply chain with the last mile and other opportunities, and last but not the least, providing digital operations. So this has become a much more complex ecosystem than what it used to be in the last many, many years. And that actually brings us a lot more challenges, a lot more opportunities. Moving on to the next slide, please. Well, in order for us to connect the dots, as they say, or in order for us to derive the value and the business from all of these business domains and opportunity space, there has been a lot more focus, as Mark said earlier, in the last 10 to 15 years about the data platforms and the power of data. How do we harness the power of data? How do we harness the opportunities? How do we harness the capabilities? That brings a lot more challenges in terms of the data platforms, where they were today in past and where they are today. The biggest thing we have seen, my experience of working in the CSPs for the last many, many years now, is the data is become much more complex. We are dealing with some very, very complex network logs. Some of those are in a telco proprietary formats, sort of an unstructured domain of data, sort of, binary file formats. These data sets are now coming at a very exponential size of data. We typically see on an average around 0.5 petabyte of data coming to us in what we look at more of a file-based streaming platforms. And this is where the complexity comes in. In a traditional data platforms, we see a lot of data coming into a streaming-based and event-based architecture. However, with this high volume, high complexity data, a lot of our telco network assets are still generating data in a flat files or binary files. So bringing all this data into a high volume, high complexity, high scale, variable file sizes, it brings a lot more challenges. I think we will all agree all of this data is only good if we see the value of data. And in order for us to drive the value of data, the data reliability, the data observability, which Girish is going to talk about later in this session, is becoming extremely critical and important to be successful. We don't want to use hundreds of terabytes of data and create tens of thousands of tables, and they make a critical business decision. And next thing we find out is there is a tens of millions of dollars impact or a people impact. So data reliability cannot be more critical and important than what it used to be in past now. And that brings in its own set of challenges and complexity. When we look at that from a business perspective, when we look at that from a leader's perspective, this is all good. This is a data engineering problem, right? Looking at complexity, high volume, we have some extremely smart people to do data engineering. When we are looking at how to maximize the returns of investments, how to optimize the cost has been now becoming, I would say, one of the biggest pain point, if not the biggest. The amount of data processing, the amount of data complexity, the amount of insights, the amount of analytics, to do that at the most cost-efficient manner, and with the plethora of tools, and then tons of hyperscalers doing different things. How do you run that in the most cost-efficient manner? How do you do ANML, where you're not investing or spending tens of thousands of dollars, $100,000 on just an ideation, but how can we do this investments in the most cost-efficient manner on the platforms? It's a big opportunity space for CSPs and other enterprises in general. I think the word we are looking in right now, the most critical currency is the time, right? We will all agree that we don't have patience to do things 4 hours from now or 12 hours from now, 24 hours from now. We want to solve the problems as they're happening. So there is lots and lots of need around real-time analytics, real-time intelligence, building these real-time data platforms. And it's easier said than done when you're dealing with the high volume, high complexity, high scale data sets coming from diverse data sources. In order for us to drive the value from this real data platform, there is a big need for how do you define this optimally. And last but not the least, we can have the complex data sets, we can have the complex volumes, we can have the best systems, best platforms, but we can only be successful if we have the best team. If we have the people who can bring the nuggets out of this, the data is wealth of data sitting across. How can you get the diamonds from a coal mine? By bringing the right people with the right skills. I think the skills is becoming another big opportunity area, especially with this tons of technologies, tons of new innovation coming in the space of data platforms, data solutions, AI, ML, and we name it. Having said that, I mean, there are tons of opportunities in this space, and that brings in a lot of options for the business leaders and the technology leaders to look at how can we build these solutions. Next slide, please. Okay, so that's kind of like my most important topic. How are really people building this, or CSPs or enterprises building the data platforms? We saw this poll, interesting poll, which TMForum guys, Mark, ran a few minutes back in the beginning of the session. This is really, really interesting. We saw this, most of the people picking up Hadoop as a de facto data platform. And I think this is nothing different than what we have seen over the journey we have embarked in a few years back. Typically, there were tons of investment done over the last 10 years or so around building a legacy platforms, starting from more of a databases and data warehouses to more of a enterprise data lake, started in the early 2010 onwards. And then the focus has been more on optimizing those legacy platforms than investing new and building new on that. The hyperscalers has been investing a lot of money. There are a lot of niche companies who are basically bringing a lot of open source technologies and platforms, with the Google leading from the front on Kubernetes. And there is a lot of focus on Iceberg, Hoodie, and many, many other organizations on Flink and what stuff. So there has been a shift in moving from a traditional Hadoop to more of a open source platform. We will all agree that hyperscalers have given us this opportunity to build this highly flexible, highly resilient, highly agile, and scalable solutions with the public cloud and private cloud. And I think Microsoft, AWS, Google, OCI have done a tremendous amount of innovation and investment in this space. And this is where we see a lot of people taking the advantage of the speed and the agility and time to market. At the same time, in the last few years, we have seen some trends in where a lot of smarter enterprises are not just looking at moving everything big bang into one platform versus another. The focus has been shifting more towards building a hybrid data platform that can be a combination of a on-prem infrastructure because of security, privacy, and other concerns about what data we want to put with the CCPA and some other GDCR and other stuff, and managing the cost. So there is a lot more projects and products and companies building products around a truly hybrid public cloud, private cloud, on-prem and public cloud, those kind of data platforms. Next slide, please. Well, I will talk a little bit about what we saw in the previous about how the enterprises and some of the CSPs globally are doing things, I will touch a little bit on what our journey has been over the last 7 to 8 years. Like anybody else, I think when we talked about big data, when we talked about call detail records, analytics around network, and correlating this data with some of the capacity of our network, congestion of our network, building performance of our network, the traditional migrations were more around moving from a database or a data warehouse where Teradata of the world, Netezos of the world, Greenplum and other technologies were very, very dominant in the industry for many couple of decades. The journey for us started with migrating our workloads from a data warehouse to Hadoop. Like many, many people, we saw the great opportunities with the data lakes, and that's how we started our journey. Over the 2019, we saw a tipping point on what Hadoop can do with some of the limitations and some of the gaps and where the data was growing in terms of scales. So we started augmenting or adding what we call as cloud as a part of our analytics ecosystem. And we moved and migrated and modernized some of our workloads from our on-prem infrastructure and systems into cloud in 2019. I will say it's not an easy journey. I think migrating from a platform on-prem to a cloud is more of, there is nothing lift and shift. It's about changing approach, and we'll talk a little bit about that in the next slide. However, in 2019 to 2021, in pretty much in a very short amount of time, we learned some gaps in terms of scalability, in terms of cost management, cost optimization, and we started building some of our critical analytics building blocks on an open source based technologies. And in the last 2 years, as we have built this transformation journey and embarked this journey with the flexibility and the capabilities and the innovation, the multi-cloud is bringing some of the, to get the best of the both from all the cloud providers, including AWS, Azure, GCP, Snowflake, and AWS to name few. We have started migrating or started working on modernizing some of our workloads into a truly a multi-cloud environment. Next slide, please. I think no journey is easy, right? I mean, we all think that we can use Hadoop. We bring in some bunch of super smart people. We're bringing some super good use cases, bring in our partners, and we think it will work. It does, but that comes with a loss of learning. As we embarked our journey on Hadoop, over the 4 years of our journey, we learned that Hadoop was definitely a game changer in terms of how people were able to unlock the possibilities of big volume data sets, high complexity data sets, distributed data processing. So it really gave us that opportunity to leverage Hadoop to solve a lot of our problems, going from a 2 terabytes of a data per day to more of a 20 terabytes of data per day processing became a reality for us. However, it came with its own set of opportunities and challenges. As we started doing a lot more analytics and modernization of things on Hadoop, we ran into scalability issues. And many of the folks who are on the technical side will definitely agree on some of the name node challenges when you're dealing with the small scale files, small files, large volume of files, large number of files. So we hit a tipping point with the scalability. And we also learned that, just like any new platforms, Hadoop was not easy to learn. So you need to have some really smart people in terms of how to manage this complex ecosystem of different tools in Hadoop. That actually kind of helped us move and learn towards, as we go into the cloud world, immediately we saw the benefits of cloud in terms of elasticity, in terms of agility. There were things we could not do in our on-prem Hadoop system for months. Within days, we were able to innovate, we were able to ideate, come up with the new use cases, onboard our users, give them the other possibilities in terms of AI and ML, which were not available in the traditional Hadoop when we were working in our journey in past. However, cloud works really well, but we don't have an infinite budget anymore. We have a very limited budgets now. We want to be very cost efficient, and the way the whole cloud is built, and it brings in some very complex challenges in terms of how to manage the cost. However, that our journey into Kubernetes is where we were able to truly build a highly scalable solution. We were able to take power of this on-demand scalability in terms of scaling up and scaling down the resources to get maximum utilization infrastructure. We are not paying for 10x more cost if our workloads are running on the off-peak hour, during the off-peak hours. However, Kubernetes for a data platform at a high scale, massive scale, needs some very, very, very advanced skills. You need to have people who really understand the infrastructure. You need to have the people who really know how to do things at scale. So in order for us to be successful in our journey, we invested heavily into some of our people to do it the best. And then some of the learnings we have seen early from our journey on multi-cloud, it is providing a lot more flexibility in terms of looking at what is the best. We don't have to basically have a vendor lock-in by doing everything in a one public cloud provider versus doing the things in a Hadoop. We can now take the best of the best of capabilities and features from a, let's say, Azure is providing a really awesome, or AWS is providing a really awesome data lake with S3, and GCP or Google is coming up with this truly data mesh architecture with BigQuery Omni, and then you want to leverage a machine learning of a third cloud provider. So that gives you the flexibility to bring the best from all. At the same time, when you bring in a multi-cloud, a mesh, when you bring in too many different technologies, when you bring in too many different components, it brings in governance challenges. It is not easy to manage a multi-cloud environment where everything is built in a different fabric, everything is running on a different environment. I think that brings in a lot more opportunities on how do you manage your data, how do you manage your assets, how do you manage your infrastructure. So that is an opportunity area, space area we are learning on and working on right now. And as I spoke earlier, I think operability is a super difficult problem to solve, especially when you're looking at multi-clouds, and in some cases you're leveraging a IES service, in other cases you're leveraging a PaaS service, and in other cases you're learning a SaaS service. How do you integrate and operate and manage all those together? So that has been some of our learnings or the journey of our data platform modernization over the last many years. Moving on to the next slide, please. I would like to summarize with what are the key pillars of success for any modern data platform journey. I think just like anything else, the first and foremost is the collaboration. You can only be successful if you bring people together. You can only be successful if you bring ideas together. Data platform team should not be thinking that I'm going to build everything by myself and then I'm going to give these cool tools to my user community. A business leadership team should be open to having this business discussion with the technology leadership team to bring what is the top-down approach on solving this problem. We cannot be successful if teams are not together. It's always about one team, one mindset, one goal. I think the second thing we learned is what I call as a fail fast, pivot fast approach and mindset. Do not rush into doing things as you hear about things. Spend enough time on understanding and identifying the problem. Spend enough time on what is important for the business instead of what is the shiny object I want to look at today, right? I think we will all agree that understanding of domain data, statistics, and tools in the world of modern data platform with the AI and ML and this tons of different tools and technologies is extremely important. You are not going to be successful if you are looking at domain as a silo and you're having a data as a silo and you're having tools are in a different location. I think how do you harmonize, how do you bring that together is extremely critical to be successful. In order for us to do all those things, we can't be successful if we don't have the right skills and right talents. Invest in your people, train people, bring them opportunities, invest time in hackathons, give team opportunities to think beyond normal, give them team opportunities to look at how can we do things differently, right? Spend some time, some of the things we have been doing internally is putting up a dedicated focus time on hackathons, setting up some time for investing in doing things which are not part of your day-to-day projects or the next big thing. So invest in that. That is extremely important. In this complex world, we have seen that data governance is important. The data is now huge. The data is complex. The business is trying to solve the data differently, different problems. Managing data is becoming a critical problem. Bringing the data governance, bringing the data board, bringing the transparency, the accountability, and how do you govern your assets, bringing the data literacy, extremely important. And last but not the least, I would like to say that focus on your data observability and data quality from day one. If you're looking at data observability and quality as an after effect, you're going to have a lots of problems to solve those issues and solve your business problems. Having said that, I want to thank you for listening to my talk today, and I will hand it over to my friend Girish for sharing his insights on the data observability.
Thanks, Vikas. That was fantastic, and I really like the way in which you started off with your journey, how you got started, and the key findings. Because often people, from a technology perspective, they think, "Hey, let me look at the tech stack." You've focused on key things. For me, everything was fantastic. You give the continuum study or 4 multi-step journey there. That was awesome. And the innovations that you're doing, right? Whether you talked about hackathons, and what you're really doing is fostering the collaboration and the cultural shift. It's from my perspective, you're disrupting the culture internally to make people more collaborative, learnings, and getting them to think more broadly and make them comfortable as well. I really like that, Vikas.
Thank you, Girish.
Cool. Awesome. So what I thought I would do is to spend a few minutes about how data observability helps in a platform modernization journey and a lot more. So if we can go to the next slide. So before we get into what is data observability, how it helps enterprises and communication service providers, what I wanted to do was to kind of recap the pains and challenges experienced by data leaders, no matter where they are in their journey. So this is a classic data ecosystem or data architecture slide, right? So as you see on the left side, you see data sources, and then you ingest data, it goes to a raw landing zone, there is an enriched zone, and then the consumption zone. And then people either run reports or run data apps, or AI, ML people come in, and along the way, it's orchestrated from a pipeline perspective. That's great. So if you can advance once more. So the problems that people experienced with what Vikas depicted, whether you started in legacy data warehouses, then Hadoop, then cloud, and now multi-cloud. The challenges, if you don't architect and don't consider that upfront, you'll still run into that. Just because you move to a cloud or a multi-cloud doesn't mean you data quality is not an issue. You may platform scaling issues, you'll still have that. Doesn't matter what cloud native platform you're under, it's just masked from you. So what about data quality related to reliability? Is the schema drift still persistent? So the pain points of waiting to do data quality in the consumption zone instead of starting to address it all the way on the left, that is doing a shift left, will continue to hamper people no matter where they are on their data modernization journey. So our view is that there are just relying on legacy ways of doing it from a tooling and process perspective is insufficient. There are better ways of doing it. If you can advance, next slide, please. So our friends at Gartner came up with this report. So I mentioned at the start of the webinar that we are proud to have pioneered this category along with industry partners and customers, including Gartner here. So Gartner came out with the report last year, and what they said is really, really important here, right? What they said is data observability has now become essential to support as well as augment existing and modern data management architectures. And Vikas talked about how he and his team are using it and the importance of data observability and the related data reliability as part of his modernization journey. So what Gartner started articulating was that you not only need to observe the data, you need to look at the data pipelines. You need to look at what are data users doing, what is the data lineage, and what's the data infrastructure. Historically, this might have all belonged to different teams and different tools. Some companies use anywhere from 5 to 8 tools for these things, right? So what's fascinating is in this new category called data observability, there are better ways of solving this so that the cross collaboration that Vikas mentioned can happen much faster. And what we've also done is, as a courtesy to our listening audience today, we have made the report accessible for you. It's a quick read. It will take you about 10 to 12 minutes, and it'll really get you to rethink rethink what you're doing and open your eyes into why you should start considering data observability for your data management and analytics journey, no matter where you are. You may be modernizing today, or you might have even finished modernizing. It's an essential solution is what it's become. So if we can advance to the next slide. So what we at Axel Data offer is we offer a data observability platform that is depending on your preferred model. It's available as a SaaS service, or it's available as a self-hosted service. So what's really cool is Vikas talked about some of the challenges with Hadoop and other ongoing challenges with some cloud native platforms that he's experimenting and is operationalizing. We've solved all the proprietary Hadoop related challenges. We also integrate and support the cloud native platforms. Pick your favorite cloud service provider, we integrate with them as well. So what we do from an architectural perspective, this is a very oversimplification, is we have a platform, we ingest data from all sources. We start with data quality and reliability all the way from the source and the raw landing zone to the enrichment zone and to the consumption zone. That way, we ensure that the data quality is and the drifts are all taken care of, and it's reliable when you get to the consumption point. And along the way, we also provide you the ability to not only provide insights into, is your platform operating at the right level? Do you need to scale up or scale down? Or do you need to, are there certain queries that are poorly performing, or you need to have runbooks to kill them? So so we take all this insights, we get all the data from directly from the platform or through API or other mechanisms, and we have a metadata plane. And we use that to create insights or recipes or automated actions and alerting, depending on your propensity. Sometimes our customers want to be alerted of data incident related to data quality, or sometimes our customers want to understand the spend, how are they tracking from their licensing. So what we do is we provide these insights, recipes, or actions and recommendations too, and we provide them into three broad categories of use cases called data reliability, operational intelligence, and spend intelligence. Think of spend intelligence as cost optimization or cost control. That is, in the case of perhaps if you have started using a cloud native platform, you may be in a consumption model. I love consumption models, pay as you go, that sort of thing. But again, it's easy to blow past your budget in a matter of hours, if not hours, even often in minutes, is what I've heard, right? So what are the controls you have in place? Do you have the swim lanes? Do you know which department is consuming your Snowflake or Databricks resource? Which accounts? What are the SQL queries or other queries that are consuming majority of the cost or compute resources? So we provide insights into that. And when it comes to data reliability, we have a holistic solution that goes beyond data quality. We provide insights into what help you eliminate schema drift, data drift, and also provide you data reconciliation as you're migrating from perhaps a legacy platform to a new platform, and also within your own platform. And the last one is operational intelligence. Think of this as when you're operating a large platform with hundreds of petabytes, you want to make sure it's performing well. So, and that's what we provide, all within one single platform. Next slide, please. And you can advance one more, please. Yeah, so the net result is from a data observability perspective, it's not, as I was mentioning, we look at the entire data ecosystem or the entire data architecture, starting all the way from the sources and take it all the way to the consumption layer, not only for data reliability, but also for cost optimization or cost control, as well as platform intelligence and platform operational use cases. Before we open up for Q&A, I wanted to share one slide about Axle Data. Next slide, please. So just to recap who we are, as I mentioned, we are a pioneer and leader in data observability. We were founded in 2018. So yeah, we got started with data observability before most of the other vendors existed in the space. And frankly, we have been fortunate to partner with some of the logos I've listed here. I haven't listed all the other logos that are customers of ours, including some of the large telecom providers in the world, as well as some other financial services and healthcare companies. And as I mentioned, we offer a single platform that you can use across multi-cloud, hybrid cloud solutions. And we understand data, and we are absolutely ecstatic to partner and work with the data leaders wherever they are in the world.
Girish and Vikash, that was fantastic. That was fantastic. So I've got lots of follow-up questions, which we'll move to in a minute. And Girish, interesting. I almost see it as being, it's almost like a data optimization strategy. To go to observability, there's a big optimization part I see within that, which is very interesting.
Right, thank you.
And so I think we're going to have a second poll question. So let's pick up it now. So second question, how are you addressing data platform issues? Select all apply. So they're similar to the last question. So you can pick 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. Probably need to think about this one a little bit more. The other one was a nice simple question. This one is one to think about, I guess. So how are you addressing data platform issues?
I'm really curious about the answers to this.
Yeah. We'll give you just another 30 seconds. Some of you still out there thinking. So all of these replies that you give are, it's all confidential. So don't worry, we can't see what you are individually putting in there. So that's all hidden from us. So please don't worry about that. So it looks to me as if 2/3 of our attendees are migrating to cloud, which is interesting. And at the same time, hybrid platforms. So Girish, I know that you've been particularly interested in this one. So any thoughts, observations on those replies?
Yeah, I expected that kind of results, Mark. What I'm seeing is a slight shift from last year to this year. Last year, I saw majority, even 80–90% of the folks saying that they're migrating to a cloud platform. And this year, I'm seeing more of a hybrid approach, not only because of, like Vikas mentioned, managing the budget better or trying to do more with what they already have while managing the spend on the cloud platforms. So this year, I would have thought maybe it's a little bit higher on the hybrid side, but directionally, I see that it's trending that way. That is roughly about 2/3 migrating to the cloud and rest on the hybrid.
And I think the point you make is an interesting one. And obviously within TMForum, we look more broadly at how telcos are evolving their compute strategies, private, public, hybrid, and multi. And there certainly does seem to be a pause for breath, shall we say, in terms of this migrating workload application into the public cloud because of those cost issues that we've talked about. and also because I guess of the interoperability and the lock-in issue we talked about. So what you're hearing, Girish, is consistent with what we're hearing as well. And we'll come on to that in the Q&A session. So Vikas, anything from you that, again, what you'd have expected?
Yeah, no, I think I'm definitely expecting that. I think when we look at the enterprises across the globe, right, there is still a long way to go in cloud adoption, right? And so, we saw from the previous poll results that a lot of organizations or the participants here are using Hadoop. So it makes an obvious transition in terms of going from Hadoop to a public cloud. So not surprised with this, responses we saw from our participants here.
Good. Okay. So we're now going to move on to a Q&A session. So I see we've had a couple of questions come in. So thank you very much for those. If you have questions for Vikas about what T-Mobile's up to, for Girish and his observations about how from a technology perspective moving forward, please use the Q&A box. And I've got some questions myself to probe in. I wish you had now, we only have 15 minutes, so we'll try and do our best. So I want to take us back to some of the early comments you were making, Vikas, in your presentation about the growing complexity and the sheer, volumes of data. And where we are today in April 2023 is the world has been abuzz with talk about generative AI, ChatGPT. With the telco perspective, AI ops, automation are very, very big themes. But and the volumes of data, types of data we're going to be running in the future. I mean, it's so exciting, the whole AI ML world, but we don't quite know where we're going to end up, how much and what. I mean, how can we be, how confident can we be that we're on the right path and that we're building the platforms that are going to make sure that we optimize the potential of AI and machine learning?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I think I will say that this is a really exciting world we are in right now. When we were looking at data platforms a few years back, the whole integration of data platforms into the AI ML into data platforms was very, very naive. It's a lot more mature now with the billions of dollars in investments the hyperscalers are doing by bringing the AI and ML as a core integral component of the data platforms. Whether we, with the generative AI, look at Microsoft investment in OpenAI, Google doing the same with Bard, AWS actually partnering with a niche company called Hugging Face. Everybody's investing. There is a lot more investment in terms of bringing in the focus on ML ops and more focus on auto ML. However, I think to me, the critical part of this to be successful with all these cool technologies is more around how do we become responsible, right? It all comes down to responsibility, and it all comes down to alignment on the problem we are trying to solve. Not every problem has to be solved with AI and ML. Spend, again, as I said earlier, more time in investing what needs to be done and how do we do it, and then leverage this really awesome solutions hyperscalers and other niche companies are building.
Interesting. And I mean, whatever way we think about this, the volumes of data are going to explode, are they not? I mean, so that's both from internally running AI and ML for just to run your business more profitably, to your customers, to the world of IoT. I mean, you talked about elasticity and scalability, but you also talked about cost. And I mean, this is, I mean, maybe I'll come to you first, Girish, actually, on this. I mean, I know that when I looked at what your data observability platform does, insights into who's using what and costs, well, very much one of the three, I think, aspects in terms of, I mean, in terms of what's driving interest in your solutions, is cost the number one thing out there for people to focus in on?
The answer is yes, if it's a cloud native platform. Particularly certain types of cloud native platforms. and data reliability shows up quite prominently as well. So if you don't mind, I quickly want to piggyback on what Vikas said. He mentioned something about responsibility, right? I'm going to mix up two different concepts here about, I'm seeing more responsible buying from the ML teams and ML and AI teams. Previously, there was always this approach that, hey, I'll spin up my own workloads, my own data platforms. And now I see more of a collaboration that Vikas talked about, because I think Vikas's team also, end of the day, they do run analytics for the business, if I'm right, Vikas, right? He may manage a platform, but at the end of the day, he provides the analytics. So what we are seeing is more the ML and AI teams, instead of doing observability on their own, they're saying, okay, well, I'm relying on the other teams, aka data platform teams, and perhaps they're also looking at how can we get observability up earlier in the cycle, in the ML ops cycle, so to speak. And that's where we are seeing a synergy between things around data observability, ML and AI, and the underlying data platform as well.
Do you want to come back on that, Vikas?
Yeah, I will add to what Girish said. Absolutely. I think this responsibility is not just in, deriving the value from the data, or it's also about how do you manage this, massive, vast infrastructure, right? I mean, you talked about, the scale of data. We talked about the volume and the complexity. I think the cost, in my opinion, should be now part of your design. Cost should be part of your underarching, buy-ins from your leadership thing, right? Bringing that transparency, bringing that visibility of cost, not just to the data teams, but also to the business teams. I think it takes you a long way forward. And this is where we see, my friend Axel data teams, Girish, they are doing some really, really good thing in giving that the granular visibility on how much you are spending to help you drive the value and ROI for those investments.
When you say it's part of design, I mean, that's has a fundamental implication for how you're thinking about what your cloud migration looks like, and the balance of hybrid versus public and multi-cloud. It's causing us to step back and think a lot harder about how we manage costs, and the cost implications 2, 3, 4 years down the line, and the transparency of costs, I guess, as well.
It's actually a blessing, actually. The cloud is giving you that visibility upfront. In the older days, when we used to buy infrastructure, we'll buy upfront. We will often over provision infrastructure. We may need 5 terabytes of volume of data for processing, and inside we might spend $5 million extra on that. So now the transparency, now the benefits of cloud is giving that visibility. So when you're designing your solutions, do this estimation, do this forecasting, right? By leveraging tools like data or looking at the native services from hyperscalers.
So we have some questions coming in. Do you have any suggestions on how we manage data from different geographical areas, many with their own data protection regulations? So that's an interesting, wasn't it? So I think that's a big theme for people.
That's a very, very good question, actually. Super good question. I think the world of privacy and the concern, the compliance we are living in, I think there is no one single solution serves all. Some of the things we are seeing in terms of successful solution is either this hybrid platform strategy, where you invest in both your on-prem assets as well as in your hyperscalers assets, based on deciding which data you want to keep for what. If your regulatory data, compliance data tied to a particular region, keep the data on that region on-prem. The other solutions we have seen is where hyperscalers are now coming with this hybrid platforms of solutions, like, for example, AWS Outpost, Azure has Stack, where you basically bring in some of those components into your data centers to build this truly kind of like a hybrid solution without moving everything into public cloud.
Yeah, thank you. Girish, anything you'd like to add on that, or should we take another question?
Yeah, so I think Vikas kind of mentioned this earlier. In the on-prem world, it was easy. You put your servers, data centers in the regions, right? But I think thanks to our hyperscalers, they also have made it easy by providing availability zones. I know I'm using an AWS terminology here. But that's made it easier, right? And data residency and is one way to go with that. And also federated approach is what I think Vikas was also alluding to. I think those are solvable, and we do that based on customer need and want, so to speak. That's really our approach there.
So I'd like to take a question. It's a great question actually from Jacob Stillwell. With the emergence of AI and ML, there's many potential opportunities to solution the telco industry, but how can we properly use it to give value to our customers and not only focus on solving our own internal issues? So this kind of touches on the question I had actually around when we talk about data platforms, the extent to which we're talking about platforms for the internal running of our own business versus platforms for our customers and products and services. It's a very big question, and we only have 4 minutes, but I mean, Vikas, I mean, when you think of data platform strategies, is that part of the world that you live in terms of, being able to externalize the capabilities on your platforms and how you use AI and ML and analytics?
I think this is a huge area, certainly. I think to maximize your investments and to provide the best, I would say, results and the value to your customers, the actual customers. I mean, imagine the case where you have a CSP data correlating or harmonizing with the healthcare data for the telehealth, right? Imagine we are living in the world of sustainability and we want to go green. Imagine the CSP data and you want to correlate the data with the weather data to predict where there might be an issue, an outage happen, and there might be a hurricane happening, right? Imagine you use this data to look at this data and build the smart cities. So there are lots of opportunities, infinite opportunities, if I may, on harmonizing this data, externalizing the data. I think to me, the key comes down to, from a platform perspective, is what I call as a data clean rooms.
Yes. I know it's a big thing for Snowflake, isn't it? These data clean rooms.
How do you use this data where you are still ensuring that people's concern about privacy, security are still kind of at the heart of how we are sharing this data, and then helping solve those problems with the hypertext contextualization marketing, with the advertisement segmentation and whatnot. So there's a huge space and opportunity in this space. We just need to do it smartly, efficiently, and then in a very secure manner.
So are you suggesting that the kind of where we are today, we're maybe not factoring that in as much as we could be in the future, that the focus is more on internal?
Absolutely. I think this is a what I call as a word of infinite opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I'll just agree. I wholeheartedly agree with Vikas. We are just getting started. That's all I'll add to that.
Yeah, and I guess in terms of challenges, and Vikas, much of your presentation was around the people, the skills, the cultural, the governance issues. And I think within the telecoms operator organization, having a platform strategy that goes all the way from the deeply tech functions, the enterprise function around network and IT, and then extending that into the customer facing functions is actually quite a major challenge. But if we don't bridge it, we won't make the use of the assets that we have, I think it's probably fair to say. So one last question. What's your view and recommendations when you have an EDW and Hadoop from 2 business entities that you need to integrate? That's a very tactical question.
I think it's about alignment. It's about buy-in. It's about what problem those 2 entities are trying to solve, right? I mean, it's about how do you break the barriers? How do you break the silos, right? There is no need to move or merge the 2 systems. If there is no need, there's investments and there's value. It's about deciding on the problem statement and what we are trying to solve, and then correlate and leverage only those 2 data sets rather than migrating or modernizing or shifting those 2 systems into one.
That's a great answer. So we'll have to wrap up. What I can say is we often talk about telco, what's the future of telco, or revenues growing. I think what we can be sure about is that this theme is a great theme, and it's a theme that actually gives us a lot of hope for the industry, for our industry, if we can actually make use of, optimize our approaches. So Vikas, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us. Girish, loved your discussion about data observability. I hope we can do this again soon sometime. For our audience out there, thank you so much for your attention, and we'll speak to you again soon.
Thank you so much, Mark. Thanks,
Thank you, everyone.
Everybody.
Bye.